25 years ago, if you walked into a McDonald's, you would be greeted with this. Today, you are greeted with this. Let's talk about the fascinating world of fast food architecture and how the whimsical places we grew up with are now mostly gone.
Sometimes only a Big Mac will do.
A while ago, I made a video talking about dead malls and their transition into becoming liminal spaces. I received an interesting comment on that video, referring to the way my local mall looked between the 80s and early 2000s, full of interesting design choices and colourful decoration, starkly contrasting the bland, white, remodeled interior of today. It marks the death of the idealised childhood on a global scale. Family amusements and whimsy was everywhere. Now, it seems like children and fun are an afterthought. This comment really got me thinking about how retail architecture looked when I was growing up 20 plus years ago versus now. And that in turn made me think of how fast food architecture has changed. I certainly remember visiting fast food chains here in the UK in the early 2000s, and there being a lot more character to their interiors and even exteriors, with much more child-friendly theming. Yet today, the average fast food restaurant looks more like an office than it does a space for families. Emerging in America in the late 1940s, the concept of fast food dining was originally synonymous with the mid-century, sleek and streamlined architecture of the day. Googie and atomic age design dominated the Californian and Floridian landscapes where many of the chains we know today grew up. However, by the time McDonald's and Burger King were expanding globally in the 1970s, this aesthetic was being replaced by a more toned-down approach, one that would attempt to fit in with the surrounding buildings and create a more family-friendly atmosphere.
There's really only one thing missing: the outer doors. Being able to run and play. That's what being a kid is really all about.
During this period in the 1970s and 1980s, the basic fast food restaurant blueprint, which I imagine most people who watch my channel grew up with, emerged. These restaurants featured brown tiled interiors, bright mascots depicted in huge murals, and of course, the mansard style roof, which became synonymous with Burger King, McDonald's, and Pizza Hut. There were brick planters filled with ferns and cane furniture, smoked glass mirrors, and the occasional touch of neon. Much like malls, they became third places for their patrons, social spaces outside of home and work. Especially in the UK, a market which the big American chains were aggressively trying to infiltrate, the concept of fast food was still novel, and there were still parts of America which were yet to be graced with the Golden Arches or the Burger King himself. From this foundation developed the restaurants which millennials and older Gen Z will remember. Perhaps you were even lucky enough to have a birthday party in one of these glorious bastions of fried food. The marketing and interior design employed by the major hamburger, chicken, and pizza peddlers at this time was geared towards bringing in children, who in turn would bring in their family members. The Happy Meal is a perfect example of this. Incentivize the kids with a toy and therefore bring in the adults to eat too. This idea was expanded upon with McDonald Land and McDonald's Play Places from the 1970s onwards, offering the children something to do while adults finished their meals and perhaps even bought extra drinks or desserts. The McDonald's party room was also a staple of the franchise up until about 10 to 15 years ago, offering a wonderfully garish and elaborately themed area of the restaurant to host that all-important McDonald's themed birthday party, sometimes even complete with one of these apple pie trees which were created by Set Makers Inc. along with the other McDonald Land figures. McDonald's were perhaps the most egregious and most invested in the family marketing strategy from the 70s to the early 2000s, but this tactic was also employed by other chains too. Pizza Hut, Burger King, and KFC had a strong family focus, with homely restaurant designs, toys, and child-friendly menu options. I'm not from the US, but I see lots of nostalgia online for Wendy's sunrooms, a homely feature that I don't think we ever got to enjoy in the UK, probably because it's never sunny.
If you want something to smile about, just say cheeseburger at McDonald's.
In McDonald land, the McDonald's, in McDonald land.
All of this is to say that these fast food restaurants were trying to win over families, and at the very least, create the impression of good hospitality in a safe environment where a family could spend time together and in turn spend their money. The mansard roof design is almost too on the nose, mirroring the roof of a house or historic building, and instilling a sense of trustworthy establishment in customers. Pizza Hut's Tiffany-style light shades were wonderfully kitsch and would have appealed to the older generation who remembered them from their childhood. This sense of heritage and focus on family time proved very successful for the big fast food chains, with them enjoying massive growth during this period. It would be remiss of me not to mention the phenomenon of McDonald's locations which were designed by their franchisees, or at least heavily customized during these decades. A now dying breed of restaurant, these locations are known as Nonstandard McDonald's and have been immortalized in a documentary by Max Krieger. They perhaps represent the best of the whimsical spirit and penchant for interesting design which was prevalent in the mid to late 20th century. In an age before the mass adoption of home delivery and drive-thrus, it was important to stand out from your competitors. And what better way to do that than to decorate your restaurant, or completely build it around a seemingly unrelated theme? I do truly love some of these designs, as they embody the kind of visual interest that the world seems to be so devoid of today. Like many of the mansard-era restaurants, most of these unique locations have now been standardized and brought in line with the rest of the current brand identity. So, why do modern fast food restaurants now sport bland grey interiors, which many view as soulless, when they are descended from such iconic and culturally ubiquitous designs? I think the unravelling of the family-friendly approach truly began here. The 2004 documentary film Supersize Me by Morgan Spurlock. This movie signified the beginning of a massive cultural shift in attitude towards fast food restaurants and unhealthy lifestyle choices. Of course, people understood the negative health effects of fast food long before this documentary was produced, but Supersize Me presented it in an easy to understand and accessible format, also gaining credibility for being Oscar nominated. The documentary was highly critical of the way McDonald's targeted children in their advertising and made it one of the main lines of attack against the fast food giant. The film is of course not without criticism, and the experiment that takes place within Supersize Me has been labelled unscientific. Despite this, however, I do think the main message is as powerful today as it was 20 years ago. The negative press that McDonald's and other fast food chains received following the release of, and independent of Supersize Me, really forced them to calibrate their whole marketing strategy away from children, which included a new interior aesthetic and eventual shift away from their mansard roof restaurants and cast of burger-obsessed characters. Their customers had become more health conscious and demanded better. At the same time, in the mid-2000s and early 2010s, the established fast food chains in the US were being challenged by a new breed of fast casual restaurant. This type of dining experience appealed mainly to young adults who perceived them as healthier than McDonald's or Burger King. Eateries such as Five Guys, Panera Bread, and Chipotle began to encroach on sales. Due to their target demographic of young adults, these new restaurants were designed in a more muted, mature style, featuring elements of industrial design and clean, simple lines. This was really the final nail in the coffin for the mansard era aesthetic. Not only did it now signify the unhealthy legacy of fast food, it looked incredibly dated in comparison to its younger competitors. Specifically for McDonald's, this shift in public perception and emergence of fast casual dining happened to coincide with the company's McCafe initiative, which saw them trying to emulate the design of chains like Starbucks. Again, a world apart from their cheery, kid-friendly theming, which was so widely embraced just a decade prior. So, the great remodeling of the 2010s took place. Almost all traces of brand heritage were removed and replaced with this sleek, wood-panelled interior. The kind of place where a guy who wears a bow tie, has a huge beard, and listens to Mumford & Sons would hang out. Coming full circle back to my opening point, this type of remodel wasn't just limited to restaurants, but was also prevalent in malls and other public spaces. Why bother having fountains which require regular maintenance in your mall when you can have nothing which requires no maintenance? Why bother having an apple pie tree in your McDonald's who needs his greasy face wiping every day when you can have nothing which needs wiping once a week? Current fast food restaurants being built today have taken this approach one step further, abandoning even their traditional roadside appeal in favour of a generic box-shaped store with an easy-to-replicate en masse interior, which requires minimal maintenance, and an external aesthetic which allows for easy sale of the property if the venture doesn't work out. No more spotting former Pizza Huts. The current prevalence of drive-thrus in the post-pandemic world also means that less people are heading inside and sitting down to eat their food, so there's less emphasis on making the store visually interesting. In my opinion, this approach has resulted in a situation where companies have given up any of the charm that their restaurants possessed, and as they say, threw the baby out with the bathwater. Ironically, they have laid bare their corporate ambitions and soured the current generation of fast food enjoyers who associate the cheery visage of Ronald McD with hazy childhood days spent enjoying a burger with parents and siblings or amusing themselves in the play place. In a very ironic twist, McDonald's at the very least seem to now be tapping into the shared nostalgia that their current adult customers experience for their classic interiors. To celebrate 50 years since McDonald's arrived in the UK, the company released an advertisement featuring a fully recreated 70s or 80s McDonald's with all of the features synonymous with the era. The entire spot centres around a kid's birthday party taking place at the Woolwich branch, the first McDonald's to open in the UK in 1974. We've really come full circle, haven't we? It's been 20 years since Super Size Me forced the brand to stop associating itself with children, long enough that it's faded from public consciousness, and for those who grew up with the last vestiges of McDonald land to truly become nostalgic for its colourful characters.
Mary? Who scored the winning goal in the 1978 Cup final?
She doesn't know.
I think there is a balance to be struck in the case of fast food architecture. It's okay to acknowledge what came before and even celebrate brand identity, but the blatant marketing to children was, of course, a massive issue. Whether or not brands continue with these bland interiors remains to be seen, but personally, I'd rather eat somewhere that has a little tainted character than none at all. The US fast food market has grown considerably in the last decade, so I don't think modern interiors are off-putting to the vast majority of customers. Or maybe fast food is now so prevalent and so established as a part of Western culture that it doesn't matter what the restaurant looks like inside. It's odd, isn't it? To mourn the loss of our temples of greasy fried chicken, burgers, and pizza. To feel nostalgic for something that not only was mostly there to extract money from us, but also wasn't good for our health. Nevertheless, many people still long for a return of the glorious, garish restaurants of our childhoods, able to compartmentalise and appreciate a time when at least designers tried to entertain us while we enjoyed our deep-fried treats. Just remember, hiding out there somewhere in the obscure corners of the retail landscape lie original, untouched restaurants from yesteryear, waiting for the march of time to standardize them into a grey cube. Go to them now, before it's too late. If you've made it this far, you have my sincere thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and telling me your thoughts in the comments. If you're feeling extra generous, you could even subscribe and check out my other videos. I certainly have enjoyed researching this topic and creating this video.